The Second Coming. This is the poem composed by W. Yeats, an Irish poet. First, we will recite the poem, The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming hardly are those words out, when a vast image out of the spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body at the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert words. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were wakes to nightmare by a crocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. As we have already observed, W. Yeats was one of the mystic poets of Ireland. The relation between Ireland and England was the same as the relation between India and Britain was there at that time. So it was also a colony under the British rule. In the same way as in our country, freedom fighters fought against the Britishers to get the independence from the clutches of British government. In the same way, Irish people united themselves and waged a powerful movement against the Britishers. Geographically, both the countries are situated very nearby, but culturally it was quite different, as the poet has already described that the British government has imposed the British cultures over the Irish people, and it was supposed the Irish culture, Irish traditions were not supposed to be developed through the government policies. So therefore, the Irish people were against of the rule of British government. They fought. There were several incidents in that country, like Easter 1916. There was powerful rebellion. Rebellion means a powerful upsurge of people against the government of Britain. So at last they were victorious, and a free country was made out of the colonial Ireland. So in that way, W.B. Yeats is a traditional poem, a mystical poem, mostly engaged in occult of his country. He was completely enchanted with the traditions and mysticisms, particularly national feeling of his country. So therefore, he has observed the incidents with a close contact, close link, and he has described in his poem this very thought of him. In that poem, because this poem was written during the First World War, it was a very devastating war. Most of the countries in the world were fighting either this side or that side. So there was huge bloodshed, murder in the whole world. Lakhs of people were killed in that First World War. And as our country was fighting in the World War on behalf of the British government, in the same way the Irish soldiers were fighting on behalf of the Britishers. They were one way forced to fight. But the poets that he like W. Yeats, they have always opposed that the participation in the First World War because it had caused a havoc on Irish people. So he were quite aware of the devastating effect of war. So therefore, he has raised certain questions about the First World War in his different poems. In this poem, he has also described the situation of at that time, that what was going on. Now we should elaborate the poem line by line. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. In the very first line, the poet has raised certain situations in the world, that the world has quite changed. It is not like the previous. So therefore, there is some kind of disorder, anarchy, mismanagement, and this gyre, this world is moving fast and situation is changing. It means now he is talking about the cyclic phase of life, that from good to worse and worse to worst, the situation is changing. So in that situation, what is going on? Even the falcon is a pet bird. It has denied to listen to its master. So it is not under the control of its master. Therefore, he says that the falcon cannot hear the falconer. It means the children, even the children are out of control of their parents. They are not listening to the words of their parents. It means they are uncontrolled. The situation is becoming dark, becoming grave and grave. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Now the things are changing. It is deteriorating fast. It is ruining. The situation has become quite worst, that nobody is listening to nobody. It means the children are not listening to the words of their parents. They are out of control. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Everything is destroying. Everything is mismanaged, dearranged, out of range. The center cannot hold. The center is not united. It means in the whole world there is anarchy. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The people are free to destroy themselves. Negatively, they are destroying themselves. The anarchy is there. Anarchy means there is no rule of government, no rule of law. Everything is under beyond control, out of order. The blood dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. There is bloodshed, there is murder, killing. Thousands and lakhs of people are being killed. Their bloods oozing out of their bodies. And in the whole world, this is the same situation. The blood dim tide is loosed, and everywhere, what is going on? Innocence is murdered. Nobody is talking about innocence, law, order. Everybody is against of these things. And innocence is not there. Innocence, it is molested itself. Nobody is observing it. The best lack all conviction, while the best are full of passionate intensity. When the situation deteriorates, when the country goes out of control, when the anarchy is ruling the country, what happens? There is same phenomena, that the best, the good people, they don't use to exercise their minds and powers. They used to be silent at the time of emergency, danger. And what happens due to that? The bad people, the anarchy people, they rule the country. They destroy the country. And the good people, the best minds, the cream mind, these refined people, what is their role? Their role is simply to look upon the situation. So in that way, situation becomes desperate, out of control, because they are watching only. They are onlookers. The good people are onlookers, and bad peoples are acting. So that's why the author has described not only in his country but in the whole world there is havoc, there is destruction, there is murder, bloodshed. Nobody is listening to nobody. Children are beyond control. Parents are not respected. The rule of government is no more. There is rebellion, there is conspiracy, and the good people of the society, they are just silent speaker, silent listener, passive listener. They are watching all the things, but they are not eager to control this. So therefore the bad people, the bad goons of the society, they are acting actively and destroying their country. So in the first stanza, the author has described the deterioration of the situation in his country, the destruction in the world that is being caused by the war and anarchy, lawlessness. But in the second chapter, it seems that he was hopeful to that of something good. There might be some kind of incarnation. Incarnation means the God may come to the earth and he may save the country or the world. It is the assumption in the religion or in the religious people that some kind of God appears on the earth when the anarchy is loosed upon the world, and it used to be saved by the God. So, as this, because this is based on Christian thought, Christian faith, so as Christ was born in 2000 years back and the innocence was restored, the rule, the law was enforced on the earth by the God itself. In the same way, the poet looks hopeful to that of God, that the God will appear and it will be normalized everything. So therefore, he is talking about second coming. What do you mean by second coming? The first coming, he assumes the birth of Christ, no? 2000 years back. But after 2000 years, what happened? There is the situation that was described in the first stanza. No? There is anarchic situation in the world. So now this should be restored to normalcy by the God itself. So he will incarnate himself. He will come to this earth and save the humanity. So surely some revelation is at hand. In our country, there is the same faith in the religious people that when the anarchy is loosed upon the world, the God comes to save the humanity. No. In the same way, this Christian faith signifies that the situation is deteriorated so much, so therefore there would be existence of God, there would be appearance of God, and he will save the humanity. So therefore he seems to be hopeful. Surely some revelation is at hand. At hand means it is very near. The chances are there that God will appear himself and he will restore this world to its normalcy. Surely the second coming is at hand. The author has suggested second coming means the second incarnation of God, Jesus the Christ. No? So he is hopeful that the God will come in that situation, in deteriorated situation, and he will bring the normalcy to the world. The second coming, surely the second coming is at hand. It is coming. It is very near. The second coming. Hardly are those words out, but it is quite contrast that while he was talking about the arrival of second coming, the Christ, the God, when the words ended, he didn't appear, but it went wrong, and it happened something else. Hardly are those words out when a vast image of out of a spiritus mundi troubles my sight. But it was a shocking situation for the author that while he was expecting God to appear on the earth, he did not appear, rather a spirit mundi, the spirit of the whole world, the ghost of the whole world that appeared in the desert. It was beyond of his expectation. While he was expecting God, the Saturn came, the ghost came of the desert, troubles my sight somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man. A peculiar kind of Saturn appears, a spirit appears that has a body of lion, a very ferocious animal, and the head is of the human. So it is a particular, peculiar animal, or what we can say, is it animal or man, or mixture of both? So that appear from the desert, from the sand, and it was coming towards him. So he was shocked to see it, that while he was expecting God to appear, God didn't appear, but this satanic ghost, a spirit of the whole world, a very giant Satan appears before him, and it was coming towards him. A gaze blank and pitiless as the sun. He has compared this giant Saturn, that it was just a pitiless. It is a cruel animal, just like the sun, the scorching, blazing sun. It is heartless. It is a cruel animal that appeared before him, and it was coming towards him from the desert, from the sand of deserts. He is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, this satanic figure was coming from the desert towards him. It seems it was quite contrast that while he was expecting God to appear, a ghost appears here. Real shadows of the indignant desert words, with the appearance of this terrifying animal and man, mixture of animal and man, even the birds were terrified. They started chirping and flying in the air here and there in all directions. So real shadows of the indignant desert words, these desert words, they were shocked to see that a sphinx, the lion and the human body, such a giant Saturn, they were terrified, completely terrified, and they started flying in all directions out of fear. The darkness drops again, but now I know. The author has observed that with the appearance of this ghost, the whole world ghost, the situation deteriorates. It brings darkness, the complete darkness. That 20 centuries of a stony sleep were wakes to nightmare by a rocking cradle. Actually, there was a peace on the earth for 2000 years. Although it was a deteriorated situation, it was not a normal situation. There was the feeling of the necessity of God, that God should appear and normalize the world. But while the author was expecting God, it went wrong, and something horrendous like the lion and the man, as called a sphinx, appears, and that terrifies the world, that terrifies the words, desert words, and that it flew. So the cradle is now moving. Cradle means a very peaceful, very cozy place for an infant, no, newborn infant. A swinging bed for infant, that we call palana. So it seems that now the cradle is moving, swinging, and it informs that something is going to happen. Some sort of God is coming to save us, save this humanity. And what rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Bethlehem, the place where Jesus Christ was born. So while he was expecting the God itself, Christ, the second coming of Christ, it means the second incarnation of Jesus Christ, but it went wrong and something satanic, something terrifying animal, it came there, and now it is staying here, there towards Bethlehem to be born. So now, in that way, the poem ended. The meaning is ambiguous. No, it is rather difficult to understand that what is the intention of the poet. In the first stanza, the poet has described the worst situation of the world, the deteriorating situation of the country, that everywhere in the world there is anarchy, there is uh, lawlessness, there is no rule, everything is disturbed, everything is destroyed. Uh, Anarchy is loosed upon the world. There is murder, there is killing and bloodshed. Not a single country in the world was living peacefully. So there is fight among the countries for nothing, without any interest. But in the second stanza, he was expecting something good, so that the world may be normalized. But while he was expecting for the incarnation of God, God didn't appear, but again a Saturn appears. What does it signify? It signifies something terrible. No, that God, while he is expected to appear on the earth, he is not coming. Rather, the Saturn is appearing. It means that the situation is not going to recover. It is not going to be better. Rather, it is going to be worse. No. So, in that way we can explain in different way. This poem can be explained that author was signifying that the situation will go worse and worse. So that was the time of First World War, where there was bloodshed, there was murder, whole countries were fighting among themselves. But it was not the sufficient, it was not enough. So now it is a philosophic turn in the poem, that it seems that the more and more worse situation will come upon the world. No, World War First is not sufficient. It was already very devastating influence there on the earth, but it seems that it is not sufficient. Something more worse the world was waiting for. And he was quite right that the next time the world war started, and it was much more terrible, much more horrendous than the previous one. So in that way, the poem is very significant. That poet has observed that the whole world is anarchic. The requirement of God is there, but God is not happy, and it is not coming on the request of the people. Rather, the Saturn is coming to rule the world. And he was quite correct that as this World War First, it was already a terrible war, a horrendous war, but more horrendous war like Second World War, it came to the world, and it was much more devastating than the previous First World War. No, so in that way, in different way, the poem may be explained.